In this video, we will dive deep into the first-person party-based RPG demo game that is free on the Asset Store, requires the Game Modules 4 package. Let's get right into it. First, I want to draw your attention to the Assets folder here in your project view. All of the files unique to the project are in the party-based RPG folder under Game Modules and Demo Game Projects. We're going to start with the title scene. In the title scene, you have the option to continue, create a new game, or load the game. One thing to notice is we have our game data already set here. It's a prefab, and we also have all of the required repositories. Now these are set to not destroy on load, so as we progress to the new game and to continuing the game, these will persist in the hierarchy. The fade to black canvas is in every scene, and this is the fader that fades to black and then loads the next scene, then fades out from black when the next scene is loaded for a nicer transition between two scenes. Looking at the three main buttons here, we have the new game, which has the main menu new game button on it. The main menu buttons all derive from main menu button, which has some shared logic there. And for this one, when we get click, we're just going to call the fade to black, start fade in, and then pass in our scene to load, which is a string, the name of the scene that we can set in the inspector. For the continue button, when we get clicked here, we're going to use the save and load module to set the same game ID to the last game file save game ID. And the last game file is also retrieved via the save and load module. Then we will fade to black and load the last scene that was used in that save game file. And if we click the load game button, we get a menu with multiple previously saved games, if there are any. All the button does is set the panel to be active, and the load game panel has a script on it that has a setup called onEnable. In the load game coroutine here, we're going to go through all of the game list game files. This is retrieved from the save and load module as well. And we're going to create a new button for each one and set up that button with the data from that game file. And then when the user clicks one of these buttons, we're going to load that game data just like we did with the continue, and then load the last scene in that game data file. Now let's check out the character creation scene. You do not have to load this scene from the title. You can just press play and it's going to populate with random data. The elements will have various components on them to add to the sort of juice for the scene, like the UI graphic scaler. These are things that you should dig into if you'd like to use them. You can certainly use them in your own game or take from them what you'd like to use for your own game. The main things to look at here will be the game data, which is under the Don't Destroy on Load area. And we can see that we have the 4 players listed here. And if we expand the first player, we can see some of the details of the player there. And if you expand the skills drop down here, you can see that when we add these skills, they are added to that list. When we remove them, we remove them. So definitely check out the different buttons to see how that logic works. If you dig into the game data script, you can find the players, which are a list of demo actors. And the demo actor itself inherits from Game Modules Inventory Actor. You may want to create your own actor class that derives from Game Modules Inventory Actor if you're using the drag and drop inventory system, or just Game Modules Actor if you're not, and then add any additional information that you might need for your project. The Game Modules Actor has a game stat list for stats, but we've added a new one for skills specific to the skills that the player has, separating it out from the actual stats that the player has. Whether that makes sense for your game is entirely up to you, but for this project, we did want to separate out the skills into its own game stat list. And you can see that we have a bunch of helpful properties that we've used in the various methods. So definitely take some time to dig through this if you're curious to see how we customized the actor class for this project. The character classes and character races are all item attributes, and they're set right here. These are set on the character race and character class game item attributes. You can see in the demo actor where these are stored. The actor race, actor class, actor gender are all game item attributes derived from the item attribute scriptable objects of the same type. And as we select these, we are changing those values for each of the players. And if you notice down here, we are also automatically updating the stat values for these players. Game modules automatically will compute stats based on the item attributes, conditions, quests, and other things that modify stats being applied to your characters. So let's check out the code here to see what happens when I click on a different character class. we'll load up the creation selector class. In the got_click method, we do call the select new class method on the character setup. In this first line here, we're actually using the item attribute repository to get the item attribute out by that name. The item attributes are scriptable objects, and instead of having to know exactly which ones you want to use in advance, we can use the repository to simply grab that just by passing in the name of the object and using get by name. First, we'll call set dirty on the current actor class. That means all of the stats that the current class affects will be set dirty and will be recomputed next frame. Then we will set the actor class to the new class, and then call the actor class set dirty again, which will set dirty on the stats affected by the new class as well. All the stats affected by the old class and the new class will be updated on the next frame. We're also going to pass some information to the Blackboard, which will send out an updated note to any follower of the Blackboard who cares about the class being changed. And finally, we have the stat selections here, where you can choose to add or subtract stats from the characters using the number of bonus points you have here. There is a minimum and a maximum allowed. You can go down to 9 and up to 18 base points, but of course the actual stat is being modified by the character's race and class. The plus and minus buttons have a stat button script on them, and those buttons we'll call either button plus or button minus. Now this one line does a few things here. First, we're going to play a clip if it worked, but we won't play the clip if it doesn't work. And whether it worked or not is really based on the plus and minus button methods on the creation scene data. So let's dig into that here. On the plus and minus buttons, we're just going to add points 1 or -1. -1 if we're subtracting points. And in the add points method, we first check to make sure that the bonus points is still going to be above 0. And here we're going to set the points to the new value, which is the game stat current points, plus the value we're adding or subtracting, and clamping it to the min and max points we've set. Now this line is basically saying if the points doesn't change, if we're saying points and the points end up being the exact same, then we're going to return false, which means we weren't able to change. It means we're at the maximum or minimum already. Set points is a built-in method on the game stat, which simply lets you to set an exact value for the points. Calling set points is the only thing we actually have to do to change the end result of the point values. As soon as we call set points, the actual final stat will be recomputed. So we're only adding or subtracting 1 point to this value here, but when we do that, the system automatically recalculates the final stat of the stat based on all the other modifications that might be affecting that stat value. And finally, we have the flavor text here. When we hover over any of these, the flavor text gives us some nice information about the stats, the skills, or the character class and race. And these use the dictionaries module. If we look down into our item attributes here, we can look at our barbarian, go to the dictionaries, and we can see that the flavor text is right here. And each of these elements have a component on them, and we'll set the flavor text whenever onPointerEnter is called on that element. In order to get the dictionary value, we're calling stat here, but this works for any of the game module objects. We're calling stat, dictionaries, value, and value of string, and then the key flavor text. And that will return the first entry in the dictionaries of the string value. Now it's turned off right now, but we can turn on the debug start option here to just quickly get through this scene and not have to go through all of these selections. If you set 3 skills for each player and exhaust all of the bonus points in the stat settings, this will change to a game start button, or we can just get the debug start button here and just click that to skip the rest and go straight to the overworld scene. Now let's load up the demo world scene in the game. Just like the other scenes, you don't actually need to load this from the title scene. The save and load module will attempt to load the last saved game in any scene where it's operating. So in this case, we already have some characters that were created previously, and we can just start the game from here. So let's first look at the debug options all around here. In the center here, we have a pause button. This pauses the scene. Now, as you can see, as I move my mouse around, I'm moving. I can hold down the control key to stop the mouse look, the camera movement based on mouse look, or release it to look around again. But when I'm paused, I can't look around. This panel uses the time board, which you can find here as one of the repositories. The time board has game time, which has a built-in pause system that is triggered when we click this button. The panel here also displays the current time and a few different ways of looking at time through the built-in methods on the time board. Definitely dig into the time board. There's a lot there. You can customize the game time values to your liking and to your project. In the top right here, we have some readouts where we have the party and player stats. If we select the different players, either by clicking their portraits or by hitting just 1, 2, 3, or 4, we can see that the information will change. On the stats, we've specifically set the number of points for each of these, and then the final stat on the left, so you can see the difference between the points, 18 in this case, and the final stat, 21.6 for speed on this character. We'll also have some information about the quests and conditions when appropriate. On the left here, we have some debug buttons. For instance, the save button will save the game, and the reload button will reload the last saved game. We have the ability to subtract hit points and restore hit points to the players. We can add active time to any conditions that are active. We can reset our position to 0. We can add 25 gold to the party stats, or we can subtract gold. We can add 100 experience to the party, and we can also get the flaming sword, which is an item that we can pass into our player just by clicking on their portrait, or when we have it in our hand, typing 1, 2, 3, or 4 to pass it to that player. We also have these two buttons here for treasure boxes, so you can see how the drag and drop inventory loads. Go ahead and click one of those to load up the inventory. The actual items have been previously generated when the level was loaded using the loot box module. And you can drag these into your players as well, or again use the numbers to select those players. And you can also go directly into those players' inventories here, click these, and see an example of how you can pass the inventory into the player's equipment list. And as you can see here, we are actually automatically unequipping whatever object they have equipped if it's the same type, so they can't have both the mage staff and the short sword equipped at the same time. You can also hit escape to exit out of that and pass items back into the open boxes. Throughout the demo scene, there will be 3 quests that you have to solve. The first one is right here. We can't actually get past without solving this quest, so let's go ahead and talk to her. So the demo project, 3 different quests. This first one is the gold quest. You can dig into the code that we have right here. There's a fairly basic dialogue system here as well. I wouldn't call this completely game ready. It was really created just for this demo, but certainly it's something you can learn from or use if you have basic dialogue for your project. We can see that the quest itself is listed here, and they are quests using the game modules. In this first one, we just need to have 100 gold in order to succeed. We can see the success conditions has this one quest condition, which is gold is 100 or more, and this is going to be looking for the blackboard value for gold points, and it has to be 100 or more, greater than or equal to 100. So right now we only have 33 gold, so if we say yeah, here it is, she blocks us and we have to get that gold. That's sweet gold. So if we close out of this and then click the plus 25 button until we have over 100 gold, then we hit space again to interact, we can now give it to her. In the quest settings itself here, we can see that our success rewards are both plus 200 experience and minus 100 gold. Success rewards don't always have to be good things. In this case, in order to subtract that gold from the party, we use the minus 100 gold reward, which will subtract it automatically without us having to do anything additional. Everything is just automatic at that point. It also gives the party 200 experience. The experience for the party, whenever the party gets experience, it's divided equally among the players here. So when we click the 100 experience button, we actually only get 25 experience for each player. So let's move on to the next section here. These are all conditions. So when I have a player selected and I hit space to interact with this, you can see I get a condition. In this case, haste is added. You can see the speed up object here has this condition giver, and when we interact we just do our give condition, which calls the game data active player, and then call add condition on the active player with that condition object that we set right here in the inspector. The add condition is a method on the game module's actor, so if your actor inherits from game module's actor, then the add condition is available to you to use right away, and all you have to do is call this one line in order to give the condition and also update the stats. Paying attention to the stats on the right here, when we get the condition, we can see that speed is increased. That's all automatic. All we did was call add condition. Everything else was computed automatically by game modules. Now, condition will also expire automatically and will give a condition called exhausted. And that also affects stats. All of this is automatic. I'm not doing anything in the script to make this happen. It's just automatically happening via the game modules. Conditions will automatically expire themselves without you having to do additional things, unless they're an infinite condition, in which case they will only expire if you call them to expire. Here we have a condition called poison, which will add the poison condition, which has an effect that triggers every single in-game minute to reduce the player's hit points. And finally, we have our health condition. Our extra health condition, if we dig into this, is an instant condition, which means it happens once and destroys itself. The effects on points are going to be 3 hit points restored. So let's go ahead and interact with this, and we can see the player's hit points are increasing. We're using the same condition giver script here, so all we're doing is calling the active player add condition and passing that condition in. Everything else is handled automatically. If we look at the health slider on our player portraits, we can see this portrait bar here. The portrait bar uses the Blackboard module to be notified whenever the player's hit points change. We'll be looking for the hit point max stats with the subject to watch hit points. Now, this portrait bar inherits from Blackboard Follower. Blackboard Follower is another class you can inherit from, which automatically will subscribe this object to the Blackboard with iFollowBlackboard, and has virtual methods which you can override for the subscribing and unsubscribing, and also for receiving the Blackboard change and receiving events from the Blackboard. On the portrait bar, we are overriding the receive change and taking in our Blackboard note. This is going to be sent out by the Blackboard module automatically, and the first thing we'll do is make sure that the subject that passed by the Blackboard matches the subject we care about, and that the topic also matches the topic we care about. In this case, we care about the player game ID, which is a unique ID assigned to the player at runtime, which is also used for the Blackboard topic. If those two match, then we're going to get the percent, which will be the value float provided by the Blackboard note, divided by the max value, and max value is our maximum value of our hit points max, and that will change the value shown on the slider. Our next quest is this sad goblin who's lost his puppy. So again, this quest is right here and you can dig into it, but the point of this quest is to demonstrate what happens when you either succeed or fail in a quest. We can click the "Of course we'll find your puppy" to start the quest. Now, the puppy is over here on the left. If we interact with the puppy before 10 seconds, then the puppy will be alive, and when we go back to the quest giver, it's going to look to see whether the puppy is alive. However, I talked too long just now and the puppy unfortunately has died, so I'm going to interact with the puppy and then go back to the sad goblin and deliver the unfortunate news that the puppy has died. So moving on, we have a magic pedestal here, which demonstrates how a player can be hit. The magic pedestal is an enemy. It has an actor class as well, and it's meant to demonstrate a magic caster, an enemy who casts spells. So dig into that to understand how the information from the caster is being passed to the ball and then to another character, another actor, when it collides with that actor to cause damage. On the side here, we have a box that we can open and collect the loot of if we'd like. And then we have the final quest giver right here, this old man. So yes, indeed, this quest was there so I could demonstrate adding custom quests. This way you can create quests where your players can choose the reward, or you can set the reward through other mechanisms in your game, perhaps based on past player behavior or other aspects. So in this case, I'm going to choose 500 gold. Around the corner here, we have a door. I'm going to step up to this to enter the dungeon. In the dungeon, we have a few of these bad guys. Now, they don't move, but when we get close to them, they'll attack us. They're not very strong. They won't kill us unless we just stand there for a long time. And when we interact with them by pressing the space bar, we will be attacking them. I'm going to clear out the console so we can see some of the details.
Ouch, that hurt. Ouch, that hurt.
You notice that the player portraits are orange and then white or blue when they're ready to engage and do another action.
Oh no, I'm dying.
So if you dig into the console here, you can click on these messages to find the methods that are performing these attacks. On the demo enemy here, we're going to perform attack by first grabbing a random alive player, and then we're going to compute the damage. I have a party-based RPG statics class here, and if we dig into that, we can see that our compute damage is going to take in our actor, our defender, a rounding method which defaults to none, and if we were rounding to the number of decimals that we're going to round to. The algorithm for computing damage isn't very complex here, so definitely dig into this if you're curious to see how we compute damage in this game. We can pick up the dead body by interacting with it, and sometimes it will give us a drop, and if you look at the imps themselves, you can see and a reward on pickup for points and also loot, which is an item object reward and a point reward respectively there. The reward on death happens when the enemy dies, and the reward on pickup happens when the enemy is picked up. I'm going to run by these other enemies, and we have some magic pedestals down here. I'm going to run by them as well, just so we can quickly get to the demo demon at the end of this level. Here's another bad guy, and one more right there. They don't move, so they won't chase you around. Pretty simple.
I am the devil demon. You shall not pass. Although
That is true. The demo demon is stronger than the others, but the demo demon is pretty weak in the end because I don't want you to actually die during the game here. On death, we have experience 120 points, and on gold, when we pick up 100 to 120 point reward there. So let's move forward and fight the demo demon. The demo demon seems to have fallen over here.
you got me.
All right,
I'm gonna be dead. Dead.
there we
I
go.
tell you dead because you killed me until I was dead.
All right, now we have this final portal here that will take us out of the level and teleport us exactly to where we want to be, right next to the old man. So if we talk to the old man, and so now when we click either of these buttons, we're going to end the quest, and the reward we chose, which is gold, will be given to us. So right now we have 121.94 gold. If we join the Discord, we now have 621.94 gold. That 500 gold is given to us, and that's the end of the scene. You can walk around and do other things, but there's really nothing else left to do. And so we will stop it right there. This deep dive is really just scratching the surface. If you want to go really deep, you're going to have to check out these scripts themselves, but definitely come over to the Discord, and if you have any questions, ask away on the Discord, and I will get back to you as soon as my day job and other responsibilities allow. Thanks very much, and have a great day.